Welcome to Legends of Dust and Iron. Today's chapter, Wild West Legends, Lonely Rancher's Rescue of an Apache Girl at a Tree with White Man Don't Forgive, begins with a message was both a threat and a curse, written to terrify anyone who might attempt a rescue. In the back of his mind, he thought of the countless one-shot, one-kill weapons in Roblox firm but gentle squeeze around her shoulders. "You're safe now," he whispered again. Her eyes met his, and for the first time that day, he saw something more than fear. He saw a flicker of hope, fragile yet unbreakable. They emerged from the shade of the cottonwoods into the full glare of morning sun. The mesa's crimson walls glowed behind them, vast and indifferent. Yet Calder felt a spark of defiance burn within him. No longer would this land be a monument to cruelty. He would carve into it a story of mercy, one life saved at a time. With Lena in his arms, Calder Wyatt set off across Cottonwood Flats, every hoofbeat echoing a vow. This rescue would become one of the enduring Wild West legends, whispered around campfires and recorded in journals. The day the lonely rancher found a young Apache girl hanging on a tree with a sign, "White man don't forgive," and refused to let her fate become legend for all the wrong reasons. Their journey had only just begun. The frontier stretched endlessly ahead, full of danger and prejudice, but Calder would face it with the resolve of a man who understood that true courage lay not in the roar of a gunshot, but in the soft strength of a life spared. And Lena, once bound by hatred's decree, would come to know that the vast, merciless desert could also cradle compassion. Calder carried Lena across the dusty opening toward his lean-to, every hoofbeat a measured promise. The ranch lay just beyond the next rise, weathered boards, a corrugated tin roof, and the familiar silhouette of a windmill creaking in the morning breeze. He set Lena gently on the wooden threshold, her small frame trembling as the reality of safety settled in. The lean-to was modest, a single room divided by rough-hewn beams, with an old cot, a battered table, and shelves lined with mason jars of dried provisions. Here, the frontier's harshness softened for a moment. Inside, Calder set Lena upon patched blankets laid over straw. Her breaths came in shallow rasps, each one a fragile victory. He fetched water from a barrel outside, the metal bucket's rim cold against his palms. Refilling his cloth, he returned and pressed it to Lena's parched lips. She drank gratefully, then slid her hand across the fabric to steady herself. "Easy," Calder the torn remnants of her dress where it had chafed raw flesh. Lena winced, but did not cry out. Her pain had taught her silence. Calder paused at every movement, offering a gentle word and a reassuring nod. Once the worst of the blood-soaked cloth was removed, he rinsed the wounds with clean water, a thin spray that stung brighter than any lash. But pain, he knew, could be a teacher, reminding the body that it was alive. From his saddlebag, he produced a length of coarse gauze and a tube of salve made from lard and comfrey he'd learned to mix during a winter of broken bones and blistered hands. He dabbed a small amount onto each cut, massaging gently to encourage circulation. Lena's breathing stuttered, but she let the soothing coolness spread beneath his fingers. Calder wrapped the gauze snugly, knotting it without cutting off circulation. His hands moved with precise kindness, each loop and tuck an act of defiance against the cruelty that had bound her wrists in the grove. As he worked, the morning sun climbed higher, beams filtering through cracks in the wooden walls. Dust motes drifted in golden columns, giving the room a sacred hush. Calder paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and surveyed the space. He set Lena's water flask and a small bowl of berries on a low table within her reach. "Eat when you can," he said. "Energy helps the body mend." She nodded, eyes heavy but grateful. Outside, cattle lowed in distant pens, and the windmill's blade groaned in welcome. Calder rose and crossed to a wooden shelf, retrieving a jar of pemmican and a tin cup. He mixed a spoonful of jerky-fattened flakes with water, creating a coarse gruel. Returning to the cot, he offered it to Lena. "Steady now," he coached. Her lips parted as she took the cup, sipping carefully. Each taste brought a hint of life back into her pale cheeks. With her basic needs tended, Calder turned to securing the lean-to. He stacked a small pile of firewood near a metal stove in the corner. Gathering tinder from his saddlebag, a few strips of torn sackcloth and shaved pine shavings, he struck flint against steel. Sparks danced, then the tinder caught, glowing bright. He coaxed the flame into a steady burn, the stove's chimney sulking in a corner as smoke curled out. Soon, warmth filled the room, driving off the chill that clung to Lena's skin. Calder moved to the cot's head and brushed a stray lock of matted hair from Lena's brow. "Rest now," he whispered. "I'll be right here." He draped his own coat over her shoulders, the leather worn smooth and familiar. Lena closed her eyes, her breathing evening out. He watched her for a moment, then shifted to a corner bench, removing his boots and loosening his shirt. His body ached, every muscle tense from the morning's rescue, but adrenaline had kept the worst fatigue at bay. Now, the gravity of his day's labor set in. He unrolled his bedroll atop a pile of straw beside the bench. By the oil lamp's flickering light, he checked his weapons. Colt revolver loaded, Bowie knife clean, rifle slung near the door. Nothing would catch him unprepared. Beyond the lean-to's thin walls, trouble still roamed. Outlaws might return, prejudice might follow him home. Yet within this modest shelter, Lena's soft breathing was a triumph. He closed his eyes, letting the world's harsh clamor recede. Sometime later, long after the stove's heat waned and morning's bright glare softened into dusk, Calder drifted awake. He glimpsed Lena sitting up, hazel eyes bright in lamplight, reaching for a bowl of berries. She smiled faintly, then bowed her head, eating slowly. Calder sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He approached, extending the bowl. "More?" he offered. She nodded, and he fetched fresh water. As she ate, they shared a quiet understanding, a bond forged in the crucible of rescue and compassion. Calder spoke quietly of the ranch, the well he tended, the cattle he branded, the nights he spent under endless stars. He omitted his losses, the burning of his childhood home, and the loneliness that had shaped him. Yet in his words, Lena heard solace, a promise of safety beyond the cottonwood grove. In return, she told him her name, Lena, and with one word she reclaimed a piece of self stolen by cruelty. They sat together as darkness fell outside, the oil lamp guttering. Lena's whispers wove through the evening air, stories of her people, of desert storms that washed the land clean, of rivers that once flowed in abundance. Calder listened, each detail bridging the chasm between predator and prey, stranger and protector. He saw in her resilience the same fire that burned within himself. In that lean-to, he was not just the lonely rancher, but the guardian of her future. As night deepened, he tucked the blanket around Lena's shoulders and extinguished the lamp. He lay on his bedroll, rifle at hand, eyes open to the dark. He thought of the painted warning, "White man, don't forgive," and felt its power dissipate. Here, in the hush of the lean-to, forgiveness had already begun. And as the desert wind whispered through seams in the walls, Calder Wyatt closed his eyes with a single vow: to guide Lena through the Wild West's trials and to prove that even in the harshest lands, mercy could endure. Calder adjusted the makeshift shelter he had fashioned from his blanket and the low-hanging branches of the cottonwood. The warmth of the morning sun filtered through shifting leaves, painting dappled patterns across Lena's fragile form. He settled beside her, careful not to crowd her space, and watched as she traced a finger along the fresh bandages around. They said we were trespassers. They said no Apache may remain. They burned our tents and can be more powerful than any six-shooter. Today, the lonely rancher found a young Apache girl hanging on a tree with a sign, "White man don't forgive." Outlaws seeking vengeance, prejudice that runs deeper than canyon walls, and a world that may never accept an Apache girl and a rancher riding side by side. Tomorrow in Chapter 2. Into the Badlands, Calder and Lena will set out across uncharted flats in search of safe haven. They will learn each other's names, confront the past that haunted them both, and discover that sometimes the greatest rescue is one of the heart. If you believed in Calder's vow, if you felt the weight of that cruel warning and the power of his compassion, then ride with us into Chapter 2. Hit subscribe